What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Creativ Rise podcast. We have our friend, Creativ Rise Mastermind grad, an awesome dude, Brian Kuranishi, on the podcast today. He is from Seattle area. He's been building a multiple six-figure real estate business over the last couple of years since we have met Brian. And his story is incredible. What I really love is that we got to talk a lot about that story today on the podcast, and specifically about his process of scaling his business, how he charges more than the average person in the real estate industry and in that niche, which is translatable across any niche, how to charge higher ticket in any niche. And then also what his process looks like in scaling a multiple six-figure business and doing a ton of shoots, building a team, building systems, when to make your first hire. I mean, we talked about so much stuff. It was so great.
So much.
He's a great dude.
He is awesome.
He's such a great guy.
Cool. And also, you guys, if you have not watched or listened to the Six Figure Creator Workshop replay, that is officially live. So
yeah, we made that live last week. It happened last week. It was so fun. It's our best workshop we've ever done.
Oh my gosh, hands down. So how can people find it if they want to?
Yeah, hit the link in the description, and you can find it there. Hit the link in the description. You can find the link in our Instagram bio, on our website, everywhere. But the description of the podcast is going to be the easiest way to get there. But it is 2.5 hours of just value.
It's crazy.
If you love the podcast, you'll love this workshop because there's visuals, there's slide decks we're taking you through. And we had a couple of our friends act as guest experts and come on and teach what they are so good at, which can really, really help your business. So,
And what's so cool about those guest experts, they're doing incredible things in their businesses. They have built like solid creative businesses in a bunch of different space. They graduated from the Creativ Rise Mastermind. So has Brian. And we have so many people on the workshop that were Creativ Rise Mastermind grads. And you guys, the community is just so unmatched. Like, Joey and I, of course, have a lot of answers. We've got a lot of things that we've learned through trial and experience, failures, successes, all that kind of stuff. But what's so cool about, I feel like, Creativ Rise, the workshop, this podcast you'll be listening to right now, is that it's more than just us. It's the entire community all together. And we've got another opportunity coming right now. Again, these are only released like every 6 to 8 months, an opportunity to join the Creativ Rise Mastermind. We have round 12 starting September 15th, which we are so pumped for, to take 35 businesses through a 6-week experience of coaching, community, and accountability. Again, the same thing that Brian went through, same thing our guest experts went through, and we're starting it all over again.
Yeah,
so we are
excited.
So pumped. We have so many spots that have already been taken from people in the US, Australia, Canada, all around the world, and people from the wedding industry, the brand industry, social media managers, people that are just starting, people that are doing, over 6 figures. We got people in all different types of spaces. So if you are listening and you're like, you know what, I want the next 6 weeks to be a massive growth experience for my business, this might be the right thing for you. So if you want to learn more about it, go to creativrise.com. All the information is there, and you are able to apply right now for one of the last spots.
Yeah, get one of the last spots. So guys, we will see you there. I hope you really, really enjoy this episode with our good friend, Brian Kuranishi. This dude is the real deal when it comes to building businesses, and there's a lot you can learn from him. So here it is. Enjoy this episode with Brian. Brian, welcome to the podcast. Brian Kuranishi, we got you on the pod. And quick little spoiler, this is actually a re-recording because I messed up and totally botched the file management. So Brian is so kind to do this again. We were like, but the benefit of us having to do this again is we get to hang out with Brian for another 30, 40 minutes and chat about his story, which is a huge win for us because it's so fun to hear everything that's going on. So, dude, welcome back to the show.
Yes, good to have you.
Yeah, guys. Thanks so much for having me back on the pod. Excited to be here.
You back.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and you are technically coming back on the pod because your first time was in the carpool karaoke style podcast we did after the last Inner Circle retreat, where we were taking you and like 5 other people in a minivan to the airport, and we were just having a fun conversation, and we turned on a camera. And so I don't remember what episode that is, but that episode was also really fun. So that was your first appearance. This is your first solo appearance, and we're stoked, man. Let's go.
Okay, Brian, I'm going to jump straight into rapid fire for you. So, number 1, where are you from?
I am from Seattle, Washington.
Yes,
Seattle, Washington. And what's your creative business, and how long have you been doing it for?
Yeah, so I run a photo video kind of media agency. I specialize a lot in the wedding and real estate space, and this will be our 4th full year doing this full time.
It's amazing.
So
amazing.
Cool.
We can't wait to get into like the story of all that and what you've been learning, because it's really, really cool. But
Yeah.
to humanize yourself before we get there, Brian, what's a flop you've had?
What's some embarrassing moment, something that's happening? Because again, you've accomplished some really amazing stuff. What's a flop? What's an embarrassing moment? Hit us with it.
Yeah, no, I actually had one happen a couple months ago. I was heading to a real estate shoot, and it's cool about real estate is that it's pretty flexible and kind of what you can do. You can kind of show up on your own time a lot of the times. And so the day of, I was like, oh, I'm going to show up early. Like, this is going to be great. I'm going to get some community shots of like the neighborhood, the parks that they have. So I show up early, and I'm like setting up my tripod, my camera, and getting all these shots. And there's like a tennis court and a pool to photograph, and so you have to kind of get inside this gate. And so I was like, oh, I'll sit down my tripod while I'm like kind of opening the gate and whatnot. And then in the corner of my eye, I see the tripod actually fall backwards. And it actually lands on the lens, so I hear like this crunch, and like my heart shattered for a second. But fortunately, I picked up the camera, and I had a filter on there, so it was just like the filter that was cracked. So like the lens itself, everything was fine. The filter saved it, but I didn't like. This was before I had even shot the house, so like my wide angle lens was like fully not operational. So I had to like drive back home, get my backup lens, and then drive all the way back.
Oh my gosh.
So I was like, a day that started to like, there was the full intention to show up early and get things kind of on track early, and then spent most of the day driving back and forth.
Oh my gosh. I feel like the slow motion, it feels like a movie, like the slow motion fall of a tripod. Like, there's just no other feeling like that.
That's happened to me.
Terrible.
The same thing happened to me, and I unfortunately didn't have a filter on that took most of the beating. The entire lens cracked off of the actual mounting plate inside the camera, and I was holding this camera that had like a quarter of the lens on it, and I was holding the other like 3/4 of the lens in my other hand. I was like, oh no. And even more unfortunate, I was not as smart as you, and I did not have a backup lens. Specifically, I didn't have a wide angle backup lens that I could run home and get. So that was unfortunate.
And you were also early, and maybe you weren't early.
I probably wasn't early. So, that's terrible. All right. So
such a good flop.
Brian, let's go high level real quick. Give people some understanding of what you're doing, where you're at, where you were when we all first met, and then we'll get into the details of that. So when we first met, where was your business financially, and then what are you guys doing this year?
Yeah, when we first met, man, that was probably two years ago now.
Yeah, 2.5.
So we were still very early on in our business, and so we were getting close to reaching our first six figures. I think at the time we were around like the 70 to 80K mark. And then after going through the mastermind, and then also being able to go through the inner circle, our business for the last 2 years has been doing multi six figures, which is really cool.
It's amazing.
So we broke that barrier of hitting like the first six figures, and then it's been pretty consistent since then. And so, yeah, it's been a crazy wild ride. A lot of learning has gone into kind of building up a team to get us to where we're at right now. We started back in 2020 as just my brother and I, and now we have a team of 5 people. So it's slowly been growing over the years, but it's been a lot of fun to kind of be a part of just kind of watching that develop and nurture and grow.
Yeah, Brian, this is so inspiring. What do you think your revenue will be at the end of this year? Like, what's your estimated revenue that you guys are going to end at for this year?
Man, so it's funny because at the Inner Circle retreat, we kind of mentioned that like the previous year was hitting a little bit over 200K. And kind of the goal coming into this year was to find a little bit more balance. Of last year was feeling like a little bit more of like a burnout and just trying to find like a balance. And I was okay. Yeah, yes. I was okay with kind of like scaling back a little bit and maybe not making quite as much.
Yeah.
And that's not really quite how this year's turned out so far. We've been very fortunate to have some really, really great team members that have hopped on and helped out. And I definitely think we're going to be I still think that we're still going to be on like the same mark for like the 200K, maybe pushing 250.
It's amazing.
But the last couple months have been like insane months for us, higher than we've ever really had.
And what's that?
A lot of that is so the months of May and June, we were hitting 40K.
Oof.
Yeah.
It's amazing, bro. That's
So that was like,
awesome.
yeah, that in itself was crazy because prior to having like a team, I think the most that I'd been able to do solo on my own was about 20K.
Yeah.
So that kind of like having a team, having people who can support you and help out and lend a hand, has definitely like you see the value of how much that they're able
Yes.
to help out.
Yeah.
And it's just
Yeah.
fun having uh, team members to work with.
I love that,
Yeah,
man. That's so good.
that was such a great conversation at the Inner Circle retreat. And if you're listening, you're like, "What is that?" It's basically an in-person retreat that we do with graduates of the Creative Rise Mastermind who've hit a certain income threshold. They have the opportunity to join
Six-figure club, yeah.
in-person retreat with us, which is super fun. And Brian was a part of that. And it was such an interesting conversation because we were like, yes, Brian, you're hitting over 200K, which is such an amazing feat, but it's not worth it if you feel like you're burning out. So like,
Yeah.
let's figure out, how do we build a team? How do we, scale back your time
Stabilize.
and stabilize
In a healthy spot.
And you've done a lot of that, which we're going to jump into, like building a team and all that kind of stuff. But how does that feel having a team member? Like, let's say someone's listening to this podcast going, I feel super overwhelmed. Maybe my income is at a great spot, or maybe it's not at a great spot, and yet I feel pretty overwhelmed. What does it feel like to have a team?
Yeah,
Like, what has that done for you?
it's it's been so crazy to have a team. I think one of the big learning curves has been, what's it look like to also lead a team and to lead a team really well. But I
Yes.
think what's been really cool is just to see how much, having an extra hand can help. I mean, we have somebody who's been able to take the load off of like delivering projects to clients and going through just helping out with email, scheduling, things like that, like things where I was spending a lot of my time during the day, where it was kind of feeling like I was at a shoot and then trying to schedule another shoot at the same time and just trying to kind of multitask throughout.
Yeah.
Whereas now I can kind of focus in on like one thing and one thing specifically, and then have my
Yeah.
team handle other parts
That's so good.
that are still good with, helping grow the business, helping build the business. But it's things that I don't necessarily have to spend all of my time towards, which has been
Totally.
a game changer for sure.
It's huge.
Okay, so I want to take us back in time a little bit. So you're obviously hitting, multi six figures. You've built a team. Someone's like, oh my gosh, should he just start that way? Like, does he just have this magical like snap of his fingers and everything just happened to be amazing and super successful? Take us back to when you were kind of at the beginning. How did you build this real estate business that's actually high ticket? Because so many people go, oh, like real estate. No, those are like $200, $300 shoots, one-off things that are just like, it's like super low-end clientele. Like, I just want to get out of that. But you've managed to build something that's pretty high ticket for the industry and a really solid brand.
Yeah.
So talk to us about how did you do that? Like, how did you go from these like maybe low ticket, whatever kind of jobs to like, something that's higher ticket and something that's actually making you quite a bit of money?
Yeah, no, 100%. I agree in the sense that like when I was starting out, especially doing photo video, like I was still learning kind of how to do the ins and outs of real estate. So at the very beginning, I was charging pretty low, kind of around like that $200, $300, $400 mark. And that was just kind of get like a good portfolio going, get my ground kind of in the space. And really from there, it's kind of working and kind of honing in on your craft, but also really developing relationships with the clients that you kind of make along the way. Because the nice thing with real estate is that oftentimes, the clients that you take on, they're selling multiple homes a year. And they're also really, I would say the mindset in the real estate space is that, they're very referral based. So a lot of my clients that I have now have all been primarily referral based.
Yeah.
And this is developing those relationships with them over the years. Like I've had clients that we worked with since the very beginning of when we first started, and they were the clients that, took a chance on us, gave us our first opportunity to really kind of help them out, help grow their brand, but also be able to start like a portfolio for ourselves, which has been really cool.
It's awesome.
And it's been so cool really just to kind of develop those relationships with them over the years, because you really get to know a lot more about them. And it's the fun environment to be with.
That's great. So just for context, what's your offer look like when it comes to real estate? Like what packages do you offer? What's the pricing, if you're comfortable sharing, of those things for just someone listening that's like, you know what, I am at like the $200-$300 mark and I want to scale this thing, but like, what can I scale it to? What do you do?
Yeah, so we actually do right now. We're doing like a all-in-one. We offer an all-in-one, so anything that an agent would need for their listing, for their marketing materials, we're able to offer it to anything that they really need essentially. And so I would say our common package right now has been like a photo video package, especially with a lot of agents wanting to focus more on like social media, on reels. Um, so our average ticket price around that starts around $1,000 per home. And it depends. Sometimes for the larger homes, we can kind of upcharge and we can add on certain things to kind of help with marketing the home. But that's generally like our median or like kind of like starting rate for photo video packages. And then
Awesome.
anything outside of that is kind of, between 1,200, 1,500 for like a full like photo video, like a 3D tour, aerials, kind of the whole shebang.
Cool.
What's the most expensive home you've ever shot? Like, what was the ticket price for you? Yeah.
Oh man, we did in our area, we did a 7,000 square foot home.
Wow.
And that pretty much took the entire day.
Yeah.
But we ended up charging close to about 3,000 for that home.
Wow.
And kind of with the nature of real estate is a lot of it is 24-hour turnaround. So, it's kind of like a very fast-paced environment, so where you're kind of doing you're pumping out multiple homes a day. So it's like, you do that home and then the very next day you go shoot 1, 2, maybe 3 homes, and it's just kind of like a reoccurring cycle. So it definitely keeps you on your feet.
Yes.
So
Amazing.
let's talk about that, Brian, because I think a lot of people get burnt out in the real estate space because they feel they are overworking themselves with too quick of turnarounds for too little money. Where you're over here going, I have built a team, we can handle the quick turnarounds, and we're making really good money in that industry. So what does it look like for you to actually be able to accomplish a quick turnaround? What are your turnarounds? Are they truly next day? And if so, what are some of the systems that you guys use? Or maybe even just take us through your process. Like, what does it look like? Step 1, you shoot, or do you do any pre-planning? Obviously, you get home. Do you send it off to editors? Do you guys edit in-house? Just so people that are like, I want to scale my business the way Brian's done it. What does that actually look like? Answer that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely developed over the last couple months, especially this year with kind of growing our team. And so initially, kind of when I started, a lot of it was kind of in-house. So I would go out and shoot, and at the end of the day, would come home and edit, and kind of developing kind of almost like a process or workflow that was pretty simplified in the sense of like, how can I ensure that we can deliver everything next morning. And so we kind of started with looking for outsourcing options. So for photos, we outsource all of our photo editing as of now. So that definitely helps with, taking a little bit of the load off. And I do like, on the other hand, for like the video to be able to turn around next day is kind of like my special focus is like shooting and editing the videos.
Yeah.
And so now that's kind of developed into training like our team, our photographers, kind of like a similar process that I would have when approaching a home. And so they're able to go out to different locations while I might be in one location, they're in another taking care of another home. At the end of the day, we just kind of upload all of our photos. We send them off to the editors, and then the next morning we're able to get them back and deliver them. And now we have another team member who's able to kind of help with those deliveries. So she's kind of managing basically sending out all of the project deliverables, all of the emails, and making sure everyone's good to go for listing their home. So it's kind of been like a steady build up to get to this point where when I was doing it solo, I was kind of managing all these different moving parts, and then now having team members that I can kind of relay different tasks to. It definitely helps with the workflow. It definitely helps with creating a better client experience because they're getting their photos back faster. And they have, basically it feels like almost like instant communication. So
Yeah.
it's not like they're waiting on me while I'm at a shoot. They have somebody that they can directly communicate with.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think that's so important for someone to think about. It's like, if you want to work with high ticket clients, you have to act in a high ticket way, which means like quick responses, clear communication, quick turnarounds, which I think you do such a great job at.
Yeah. How do you know when it is the right time to actually hire your first team member?
I think for me, when I noticed, it was kind of like I felt like I felt like I was almost being stretched too thin, to the point where like, I loved what I was doing, but I felt like, man, like I am just like going. And I knew that was not like a sustainable route for myself, especially kind of long-term thinking. And so, initially it kind of just started off when we found our first team member. It was just kind of like, what are some of the things that, um, granted, are still very important, but are things that I can maybe pass off to somebody else. And so
Yeah.
that was with our like social media. We kind of outsourced. We had like a social media manager who was focusing on just posting and interacting with our clients. So just kind of like starting small, just seeing how that would feel. Because for myself, I I almost came in with the mindset that like, and something that I've had to learn is just letting go of kind of like the control aspect
Mm.
of like, as somebody who takes on like almost everything, it was like I wanted to almost have my hand on everything. And kind of what I've had to learn is what it looks like to let go of a little bit of that control and trust in my team and know that they are able to take care of the things that need to be taken care of. Um, and so that's been like a learning process for myself, but it's
Yeah.
been so helpful to go through.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What?
And we've chatted a ton about
Yeah.
that. I was going to say, what did your process look like on actually onboarding somebody onto your team? How did you train them? Because we think you've trained people really well. I think
Yes.
you would probably pat yourself on the back too, because the success of your business shows that you've trained people pretty
Yes.
well.
Like,
But for
'cause-
most people, they're
yeah.
probably going, I don't want to hire somebody. I don't know when to hire somebody because one, I don't know maybe how much to pay them. I don't know what they would do if I hired them. I'm stressed out, but I don't know what I would get them to cover. Exactly what you just said. I don't know how to let go of that control. And once I do hire them, I don't know what I'd do with them. Like I might know what I want them to work on, but I don't know how to maybe train them well. So what's been your process for training people, and how could people learn from that and emulate that?
Yeah, no, it's definitely been different from person to person. And now that we have a larger team, we've kind of taken a different approach depending on each person's kind of learning style. So, for example, we have a photographer, Jay, he was our very first photographer, and he's been huge to being able to help grow a business and help out with handling shoots. And kind of initially when we first were onboarding him, the main thing for me was, kind of figuring out like what's important to him, how does he like to learn, what is his learning style. So for him, he's a very like visual person, and so a lot of the learning was spent, in-house, going to homes where we would have all the time that we needed to just go over what it looks like to photograph a home, steps to take, things to look out for. And for him, that was what was really helpful. Whereas we had like our social media manager who is virtual, and a lot of that learning process kind of took place. I mean, it did have to take place virtually, but she was very helpful in the sense that like, we could kind of go through. It was kind of like training them in the sense of like what are like our tendencies of like how we like to interact with clients, like what is our goal for our brand. um, and so I think that the main thing was just, figuring out like each person has their own learning style. And
Mm.
so it's almost kind of adapting and adjusting to how do we support them to make sure that they're getting everything that they need. And so it's just been kind of working with that and then kind of developing it over time. And as we go through like feedback sessions, as we go through like team meetings and things like that.
Yeah.
Super intentional.
I love when you said, because I remember we were talking about this and you were like, oh yeah, like I brought Jay on shoots with me and he would watch me. And then we would go to a shoot and I would watch him. And then after that, he would go by himself. I love that because I think some people are sitting there going, okay, I'm a perfectionist, which sometimes has a negative connotation, right? Like I can't let go of anything, a control freak, whatever. But there's a lot of positive sides of being a person like that. You have high quality standards for your brand. You're like, I have clients I can't lose. I don't want to give someone a bad experience. But I think there's a way to onboard somebody in a way that's quality rather than just like letting go of all control. You don't want to do that. But like, how do you slowly onboard somebody? And you've done that so well, I think, with like documenting your processes, having that like, I'll show you, then you show me, then you go do it by yourself. You've done that so well, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Super cool, man. Very cool story. Let's go back to the marketing. You mentioned earlier that everything you've done is very heavy referral, basis. But for someone who's at ground zero, they're going, Brian, I would love to build a real estate business like you or another type of creative business that's serving service providers like real estate agents or other type of service providers. How do I get my name out there? What is step one, do you feel like, for someone that's wanting to build something like you've built?
Yeah, I feel like I mean, even just kind of thinking about going back to when I was first starting, it was kind of looking at like, who is my target audience? And so for me, real estate agents, where are they mostly at? And a lot of that was on social media. So initially, for me, it was kind of like, looking at the real estate agents that were in my area and, it's giving them a follow, so I can keep track of all the agents that I would love to work with. And from there, it's kind of implementing kind of what we talked about in the mastermind and the inner circle, the 10-cent rules, just being able to, add some sort of value from a distance, being able to interact with them. So that way it's kind of like over time, you're almost like, before even working with them, you're building a relationship with them. You're getting to know their brand, kind of what they're looking for, and you get to see, how they like to interact with their own, their own clientele, their own followers, and from there, you start to build that relationship. And so it's almost kind of like the more that you interact with them, they start to see your name pop up a lot more. And then when the time comes and they have, especially for like real estate, when they have like a listing that comes up, who's going to be at the top of their mind is, oh, like so and so has been interacting with me for a long time. Like I see that they're looking to, maybe they have like a couple of like homes that they've shot already. Maybe let's give them a try and see how that works out. And I think that for me initially, that's kind of like the mindset that I went into when finding my first couple of clients, was just, really getting to interact with them, getting to know them. And that's kind of been like the biggest game changer for me of, I think for myself, like I didn't want to come off as like another person because real estate agents get flooded with phone calls, with texts, messages. And so it's almost kind of like if you can find a way to, just organically create a relationship with them, they're more likely to kind of gravitate towards you.
Yeah.
And it feels like the relationship as a whole is it's a lot more, it's just like a great start to the relationship as opposed to like cold calling them and being like, hey, what's up? Do you want a free shoot? Something like that.
Yeah, I love that.
Totally. That's great. Relationship is king.
Yeah, you said we talk about that on the mastermind a ton, and we obviously talk about that at all of our retreats, the inner circle and stuff. But the 10-cent rule, I love how you worded that. It's building relationship from a distance.
Yeah.
That's a really, really good way to put that. But it is just dropping in value, a comment, a share, a DM, just letting them know that you're in their ecosystem and you're giving them value. Hey, this is great. Or, hey, have you ever thought about this? Maybe I can help you with that. I'll do it for free. It's giving them value from afar to start a relationship is so, so important, which I think is really cool. Brian, what are some of the mistakes that you would encourage people to avoid making in the process of starting and scaling up their own real estate career? And by real estate, I mean shooting in real estate for everybody listening. Shooting real estate.
Yeah,
Not
for
selling
sure,
homes.
for sure. I think for me, with kind of knowing the nature of how the real estate space works, especially if you're kind of future thinking or thinking about like, how would I love to grow this in the future? I think initially was just kind of thinking about like wanting to ensure that you have all your systems in place to make sure that like, I think being fully transparent about the space, like it's a very fast moving space.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times, like, there are appointments being made, sometimes they're weeks in advance, sometimes they're 24 hours in advance.
Yeah.
But having like systems that are dialed in and having a workflow that you are comfortable with is something that's going to be really important before you even start scaling. Because, if you try to say, grab a whole bunch of clients and then they all want to give you your first shot, if you don't quite have like those systems in place, then it creates more of like almost like a disorganized client experience where maybe you're trying to scramble to get a bunch of photo edits across, or maybe you're trying to, schedule different appointments and you don't quite have the capacity to be able to take them on. With the nature of just how things go, it's just kind of like a slow buildup. And that's kind of the way that I've taken that approach, is making sure that like before we even hired on Jay, making sure that we had everything dialed in. That way, when we do have him on, it feels like it's just like a natural, him coming in almost felt just like a natural ease in. And so that's almost my encouragement, is making sure that like, you can start off slow. and it doesn't have to be like a hard race to the end because it's almost been like a overtime thing. It's just something that grows and grows and grows, and with that, the referrals kind of come with that too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's great.
Okay, Brian, I want to talk about something. You said that you joined the mastermind with us, our 6-week mastermind with us, when you were kind of like getting close to 6 figures. You were like, I'm sitting around like the 70K mark, a little pushing 80. Talk to us about why you decided to join the 6 weeks. Because someone might be hearing that and go, oh my gosh, you were already doing 70K. Like, why would you invest in your business? Like, whatever. Talk to us about why you joined the 6-week mastermind.
Yeah, no, I think for myself, I've always said that community is kind of like the biggest thing for me. That's something like in every circle that I've been in, community has always been a huge part of like developing not only who I am, but also just being able to have a strong sense of support. So whether that was, when I was in college or, when I'm doing different kind of like clubs or, starting up a business, like being able to have like a community, somebody who, like a group of people who can come and support you, cheer you on. I knew that that was something that I needed, especially coming from different backgrounds growing up. And so with the mastermind, that was kind of like the main focus. Like I was wanting to come in and meet a bunch of creatives who were all going after it. We had the same mindset. We all wanted to grow our business, but we also wanted to be able to be in a room with other people, cheer them on, see how we can support them and encourage them. And there's nothing quite like just like that sense of like energy that comes with the mastermind of just like, you're seeing in the group chat, everybody hyping each other up. You're seeing everybody cheer each other on. And you know that you can reach out to them if you have any questions or anything that you feel like you might need some support.
Yeah.
For me, that was the biggest thing. And I think that you guys do a great job at kind of nurturing and developing that in the mastermind. And plus, all the things that come with that, learning how to grow a business and learning all the ways to, develop like a sales pitch or like what it looks like to build out systems or kind of like finding that balance, the healthy hustle. That was something that, it's still something that I'm currently actively working on, but it was a good reminder of like, hey, this is what it looks like to find a balance. And I think that you guys do that really, really well. And it's something that I loved about the mastermind.
I love that. So outside of the 10-cent rule and community, the healthy hustle, what's something else that you took away from the mastermind that you've applied to your business that's helped you create an ROI?
I think for me, it was just like, I'm really going to lean back into the community aspect. I think it's just like the relationships that I developed within the mastermind. A lot of the people that we were in the same round together, like I'd still keep in contact with today. Like, for example, Haley is a great example. But even like after the mastermind, like we had a group of, 3 or 4 people. We would get on calls after the fact, just
I
like
love that.
doing like monthly check-ins to see like how things are going. So it's one of those things where it's like, for me as somebody who is coming in looking for community, the mastermind returned that to me, beyond just like the investment that I made. Like we have like these lifelong friendships. And that's kind of like the biggest thing for me. Like that in itself, beyond just like the education aspect, beyond just like kind of the mentoring and all the things that we learned, that community return, like the return on investment for community is pretty much priceless in my opinion.
Yeah, that's cool. We agree with that. That's awesome, man. What would you say to somebody that's like, is this for me? How did Brian know it was for him? And is this potentially for me?
I think if you're thinking about, kind of where you're at in your business, if you feel like maybe you're just looking for a change up, maybe you're feeling like there's a lack of support, maybe you feel like, I am trying to do all the right things, but I feel like maybe I'm not quite making the progress that I want to see. And like, I'm looking for a way to, maybe fast forward that a little bit. I think the mastermind is something that is, could be something that is for you. And I think that's something that's really cool is that, when you guys are running the mastermind, you always like to be very intentional about who is coming into the group. You have like those conversations with everybody who's interested and to see if this truly is a good fit for you, we would love to have you in. And so I think that's kind of some of the things to consider for, if you're thinking about the mastermind, if you're looking for maybe just accountability, you're looking for support, if you're looking for maybe just new ways to go about approaching your business, the mastermind would be a great place to start.
That's awesome. And then, Brian, the mastermind is an investment. Like, it's not something that's free. It's for people that are really interested in growing their business, really committed to doing something like that. What would you honestly say is like an ROI, not necessarily monetarily, but like what's a return on investment, at least for you and the mastermind? Like, what would you say, like, doing this helped create this in my business that it wouldn't have otherwise?
I think for me, I think the biggest thing was just kind of developing a good mindset on how to offer different, I'll say this, like a different way to pitch the things that I was selling. Like before, I was never really fully confident in how to really like sell the things that I was selling. Like I was confident in like the work that would come from it, but how to actually sell it to them.
That's cool.
And I think that's kind of something that I took away from just like the one-on-one call that I had with you guys, was just like, you guys really encouraged me to make that initial jump to raise my prices, where at that time I was very hesitant. I was like, Joey, Christy, I really don't know. I feel like I'm already kind of charging the most that I can. And it was just like that push that I needed to raise those prices. And since then, like I've been able to raise them even more. And
of course,
each time, like, it's that first push that you need, I think, is really helpful, because it still can feel uncomfortable. But, once you see that, your clients who are willing to continue paying what you're worth, is huge. Because, I've raised my prices, doubled, tripled them since the mastermind. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without kind of learning how to come into a space and be able to pitch what I'm doing and pitch the value of what I can offer for, whether that's for like a real estate like brand, or even from like the wedding perspective, what can I create for our couples and their experience.
So cool.
I love that.
I think that's why community, and what you're saying of like why you're so invested in community, is because if you're looking at your own business with your own eyeballs, that's great. But having somebody else looking on your business and being like, yo, you need to raise your prices, or like you need to do this differently, or having an outside perspective is what I think really helps people really grow. Like if you're the only one looking at your stuff, like that's great, but that's why community is so important. It's not for like necessarily the fuzzy, warm feelings of having community. That's a huge byproduct of community. It's a huge benefit. But I think what you're talking about are the community of actual results for your business, which is why we're so passionate about community.
Yeah, I love that. Brian, what would you tell Brian back in 2020? What would multiple six figures, like CEO Brian, you got a team of 5 people running a great business as a creative. What would you tell Brian from 2020? From 2022? Yeah, what would you tell him?
Man, I think it's just to continue chasing after what you're passionate about, really. I think that, like, even looking back on like when I first started the business, like I never thought that I could be in a position where I'm at today. Like to be where I'm at, like if you were to tell past me, like where I'd be at 4 years later, like I don't think I'd believe you. Like I'd probably be like, nah, you're crazy. And I think just to see like just the experiences that I've been able to have in this position, the relationships that I've been able to build, and just like all the things that have come over the last 4 years, like has been beyond my wildest dreams. And so I think if I were to tell, past me, it's just to keep going, to keep persevering, because it's a crazy wild ride, but it's going to be so much fun, and it's going to be so worth it at the end.
I love that.
That's so good.
Such a
I was
hype.
waiting to see if you were going to add in like, and hire earlier.
Yeah. And don't burn out by hiring.
And don't burn out.
Yeah.
Hire somebody earlier.
All right.
Brian, this has been great.
It's been so good. Okay.
Where can people find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I am on all social media platforms at TrueView Productions. That's kind of like our main business account, and that's kind of where we're most active.
Love it, man. Well, this has been so great. Thanks for being on the podcast. It's so cool to hear your story, and for you to share the story of, crazy growth. You went from 70K just about 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago, to now multiple six figures, going to do potentially 250 this year, a team of 5. a well-oiled machine. I mean, dude, we're super proud of you.
Yeah.
Super proud of you.
Excited for you. Awesome,
Thanks,
Brian.
guys. I couldn't have done it without you guys, and it's been so much fun to be a part of the journey with you guys. To have your support, it means the world.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah,
thank
our
you
pleasure,
so much
man.
for sharing your story, Brian. I know it's going to help so many people. And thanks for being here.
Thanks for being on the pod, bro.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Cheers.
What an awesome episode with Brian. Man, his story is
He's
just...
so humble.
He's so humble, and he's
So
just
humble.
like, his story and his momentum is just contagious. He sits there and he's chilling and he's teaching everybody, what he's doing so well. And I'm just like, dude, I wish I could just shake Brian sometimes and go, dude, you don't know how incredible you are. Like
Literally,
what
I
you
know.
are teaching right now on this podcast, and even at some of the inner circle stuff he's been to, which he alluded to in the podcast, where we're in person with him. Like, he's just so full of wisdom, and the way he's grown his business has been incredible.
Oh
so
my gosh.
thank
So
you for
cool.
being on the podcast, Brian. That was awesome.
Yeah, and again, you guys, applications for the next round of the mastermind are open, and they are only open until September 8th. We may have to close it before then if we end up selling out, and that is a very real possibility because there are more applications than literally ever. So make sure you apply today. We got more applications in than we have spots. Like, literally, it's crazy. And if you're wondering why an application, like, why do you guys do an application? Why isn't it just open to buy? We do that so we can really curate an awesome community of growth. Like, every single one of these masterminds have just been such an epicenter of support and community and excitement around building your business. And so we want to keep and protect that environment and just make it the best it can possibly be. We limit it to only 35 businesses. So we're pulling through applications every single day, figuring out who's going to be the right fit to claim a spot in this round. And if you want that to be you, submit an application today. Do not wait. CreativRise.com. You can apply right today, and we will get back to you.
Yeah. Shout out to Brian. Guys, great episode. If you loved it, make sure you go hit up Brian online.
Yes.
Thank him. Share the episode with a friend you know who's in the creative industry that could learn something from Brian's story, as a lot of you guys just learned, which is really cool. Jump into the mastermind if you know that's going to be the right fit for you. Only a couple days left and very few limited spots left. And other than that, guys, we'll see you next week on the next episode of the Creative Rise podcast. See ya.